Controversial opinion time. I rather like Unmasked. Welcome to Toby Jones Talks Music. Today we are talking about one of my favourite bands, KISS. It ultimately was the first band that I went to see live all the way back in 2010. I've seen them twice and they have many good albums. One of them that I think is a good album still in my opinion is this, KISS Unmasked, although it did divide opinion between fans. So this is going to be an interesting one today because there are people down in the comments already typing, no, this is a terrible album, but people have come from under the carpets in the last years to defend this album, and it is a bit of an underrated, dare I say it, gem. We're going to be looking at it in today's video and seeing just how much of a gem it is, maybe how bad it is, but from what I've said at the start, I am rather a fan of this album from KISS. So this was released in 1980, and the career of KISS really started going downhill after the release of Love Gun and Alive 2. They embarked on the solo albums project, so each member of the band released solo albums. They then starred in a film, KISS in the Attack of the Phantoms, or KISS Meets the Phantom at the Park, or whatever configuration of that title the film is in whatever territory. Now, I've watched that film a couple of times, and it's not great. It's okay, and as a KISS fan, I can smile, but it's not great. And then this album was released in 1979, Dynasty, or for our American friends, Dynasty, as it might be called over there. That had a massive hit on it, which was I Was Made for Loving You, and was very much a disco sound in 1979. And the late 70s, when you'd got punk and disco, it was a real change in time in music. You'd got punk, disco, and then new wave came into it. So after this album in 1979, the band really doubled down, but not necessarily going for disco overall, more of a new wave, and I would maybe call it power pop sound, with their 1980 release, Unmasked. So, as with Dynasty, there are 3 Ace Frehley vocal cuts, which I think they provide some good variety, really. There's 3 Gene cuts and 5 Paul Stanley cuts in terms of the vocals. I think one of the tracks, the first one, is That View, was written from outside the band, so not written by Paul, but in terms of the vocal cuts, that's the split. I can't really remember the first time I heard this album. I know I pretty much liked it straight off the bat. There's 11 tracks on this album. The one that's probably the most known and possibly the most derided is Shandy. And I think I heard that for the first time on this set here, Kissology, the Ultimate KISS Collection, and this is Volume 2. So this goes from 78 all the way up to 1991. On the start of this, you've got KISS in the Attack of the Phantoms, which is the film. You've got a music video for Shandy, a rock pop, kind of like Top of the Pops, I suppose. I think it's Germany or Holland, somewhere in Europe. That's got She's So European and Talk to Me. And then there's a KISS Invades Australia documentary as well. I really like Gene's menacing action on She's So European. You've got Eric Carr on the drums at this point, of course. Not in the band for the release of Unmasked, at least the recording of it. Peter Criss is on the cover, but Anton Fig plays a lot of the drums, the same as he did on Dynasty. And one thing that I have to say is really good about this album, and I really like, because all the albums beforehand had the 4 members in some configuration. This one's a little bit different. I really like the comic strip that's on this album cover, and the CD I've just shown doesn't really do it justice. So the story that this tells is the band's on a night out, so Paul's trying to enjoy an evening with a friend, and you can see a bit of Gene Simmons' face. Is that the first time that the top half of Gene Simmons' face was truly unmasked? And then, of course, they reveal their faces, and they are the same as they are unmasked as they were when they were in the makeup. And the guy down here, I still say they stink. And I guess that was what a lot of people might have thought when this Unmasked album came out in 1980. But that artwork is something that the CD just doesn't really do justice. Looking at this CD, it's a lot smaller, and that's the one shame about the CD format. Although I am a real promoter of the CD format, probably above vinyl. I did change from vinyl to CD a couple of years ago, but I played this on vinyl this morning. It plays fine, and that was great. But this isn't a format video, is it? This is all about KISS. Now, this is a good time play it loud album, I would say, and one of the things that KISS always used to say in their concerts, you hear it on a live, is we're going to have a rock and roll party tonight. And I think that genuinely a lot of this album is a good rock and roll party. Yes, it's dumbed down KISS, if you like. That's probably not the best phrase to use. But it is. It's less hard rock, but more power pop. Some people could call it pop, some people call it disco. I think it's more power pop, and there are some pop rock elements in there. And coming into the band at the age that I am, at the age of 24, nearly 25, discovering this album later on, I understand that maybe if you were there at the time, it might have been different. That, I guess at the time, like a football team, you were tied to your band, and that was your crest. And that after Love Gun, when the band started going poppy and disco-y and really going to the times with I Was Made for Loving You, you might have gone, no, I'm not listening to this isn't my band. What's happened to the real Kiss? So I understand that, and I understand if possibly you are of that vintage, you might have a negative opinion of this album straight away and don't want to revisit it. That's something that, for me, isn't a problem, because I'm coming to this band a lot later. I haven't got the drama of the time of listening to it in 1980, but I get that if you were maybe a teenager, or whatever age you were at this time, that it certainly might not have been cool to be listening to this when you compare it to some of the new wave of British heavy metal bands that were at the time. You think of 1980, some of the albums that were coming out in that year. You had Back in Black, AC/DC, British Steel, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden were really out there as a band by this point, and maybe Kiss were sort of unhip, and some people might have been turned off by Kiss. I do think as well that if this album didn't have the Kiss tag to it, that it wasn't a Kiss album and maybe it was from another band, I don't know, it was a debut album by another band, that people would say, yeah, that's pretty good and I enjoy that. But I think for the people that Kiss was trying to target, it wasn't really working. They went disco with Dynasty, but the problem was that they'd alienated their rock fans. They picked up kind of families, disco with the disco thing, and children as well. But that wasn't enough, really, to make their next tour a success. So the return of Kiss tour after the solo albums. So Unmasked is more of a compromise. It does provide more of a pop rock sound, incorporating some of the newer sounds of new wave. So for me, it is kind of power pop, if you like. I do revisit this from time to time, and that's why I've looked at this week, because it is an album that I've revisited a couple of times over the last week. I played it last weekend, I've played it in the car this week, and I've played it again this morning to make some notes about some of the tracks. And it is something that I have done a couple of times. I got the CD fairly recently, but the vinyl is really loud, and you can crank it up louder than you can the CD. That's more a compressed sound. And this, well, when I say a compressed sound, not a compressed sound actually, a lower volume sound at maximum anyway on my stereo. The vinyl sounds louder, and I can crank this up to 11 and have a great time with this, particularly, some of the tracks anyway. I can have a really good time. Some of the highlights would be Naked City from Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley's Tomorrow, Easy As It Seems as well, and the strangely titled She's So European. I remember I had a bit of a gathering at one point, you could call it, and I'd got a playlist on in the background just completely shuffled, and She's So European came on. I remember one of my friends saying, what the hell does She's So European mean? And I want to preface this before I talk about the tracks by saying no, it's not the best Kiss album, but you can still have a good time with it. Not every track's a winner, but there is some good stuff on here. It is an interesting quandary, though, with Kiss, isn't it? Because you could throw bricks at a lot of even the early Kiss albums. You could say the first three albums, Kiss, Hotter Than Hell and Dressed to Kill, they were underproduced, and then Destroyer might be overproduced. I think Rock and Roll Over hits the sweet spot, and then you have Then She Kissed Me on Love Gun, not the best cover in the world. Tomorrow and Tonight's more pop. So there's no perfect Kiss album. And then, of course, Dynasty comes after Love Gun. I have to say that I've probably played Dynasty once. I'm not all that familiar with Dynasty. I didn't like what I heard from Dynasty, but the way I've changed my music listening habits in the last year to give each album at least 3, 4, if not 5 listens before giving an opinion on it, I can't say too much about Dynasty in 1979. I do wonder about an alternate universe as well, where the band might have pursued this longer term, the sound of Unmasked. Of course, what happened in actual fact, after they had the experiment with the Elder soundtrack or music from the Elder, they returned to a heavier sound, and probably their heaviest sound yet, with Creature of the Night. So, could this album maybe have been the end of Kiss in an alternate world? Possibly. And an interesting thing I did look at as well was the amount of times that these tracks were played at concerts. not a lot of these got much of a run out at all. So Is That You, the first track from the album, got a fair run out at concerts in 1980. So according to Setlist FM, 41 performances of this track. But then wasn't played again until the KISS Cruise in 2017. Shandy got 11 plays actually only in 1980, but has been played 89 times. She's So European has been played 11 times by the Gene Simmons Band. But its live debut with KISS, 2021. Talk to Me, 56 plays, 41 in the year of the album's release, and then 15 in 2001. And You're All That I Want got 9 plays in 1980, and none since. A couple of these tracks I don't think have ever been played live. I don't think Tomorrow ever got played live, which is a real shame. Easy As It Seems, not much. So the band got rid of these tracks pretty quickly. I mean, if you look at this 1980 concert from the Sydney Showground on the back of the cover here on disc 2. From this album, you've got Shandy, which you would expect. Talk to Me and Is That You? Nothing else from it. And not surprisingly, as we go through the 80s, the tracks were replaced by the stuff from Creatures of the Night in 83, the Crazy Night stuff in 1987. So these tracks were pretty quickly forgotten in terms of this KISS canon. But let's get into the tracks, shall we? So there's 11 tracks on this album. Rather annoyingly on the vinyl, it decides to list it in alphabetical order, which that's happened on a few vinyl releases, which really irritates me. Thankfully, the CD gets it right and puts it track 1 to 11. So on side 1 of the old vinyl, you've got Is That You, Shandy, Talk to Me, Naked City, What Makes the World Go Round, and then on side 2, Tomorrow, Two Sides of the Coin to Choose From, She's So European, Easy As It Seems, Torpedo Girl, Let's Take a Dive. I'm elaborating on some of these song titles, by the way, and You're All That I Want. So if you're not familiar with this album, those are the track titles. There's a bit of a glare from the screen, unfortunately. So let's get into it with the first track, Is That You, which is a Paul Stanley vocal. Solid album opener this is. It's probably not as good as previous KISS album openers, but the bar is really high with that, isn't it? When you think of Detroit Rock City from Destroyer, I Stole Your Love from Love Gun, and Strutter from the debut album. And I've got to be careful here because I don't think it's worthwhile comparing this to other KISS albums. It's a different sound entirely, really. So to compare it to what's come before, it's not really worthwhile, but it is a solid album opener. It's a pop rock track. It's certainly not as soft as the next track, which is Shandy, which is another Paul Stanley cut. And I can imagine at the time that this one likely took a lot of flack, probably seen as the successor or the follow-up to I Was Made for Loving You. And this sound is probably soft rock at best, and that's not being very harsh at all, that's being kind. And where the first track is quite rock oriented, it's got a new wave twist to that first track, this is much softer. However, I'm okay with it. It definitely doesn't stand as one of my favourite KISS tracks, but I am okay with it. This one did very well in Australia, and as I've said on the back of this Kissology Volume 2, it really helped the popularity of KISS over in Australia. There's the KISS Invades Australia documentary on the Kissology set, the Sydney Showground show on this set as well. And an interesting bit of factoid, which I saw from Wikipedia, is that the title of this track is inspired from the title of a track from Bruce Springsteen's The Wild, the Innocent and the E Street Shuffle, 4th of July, Asbury Park, or Sandy, that it might be known as a shorter version. So I've never saw the link between those before, and I've just listened to all of Bruce Springsteen's albums, so quite fresh coming off the Springsteen train, and I've never made that link before in my life, but that's one of those things that'll probably stay now. Sandy, Shandy, can't pick between them. But it is only that when I saw that this track was inspired by Sandy, I thought there's nothing in terms of the sound that sounds anything remotely similar, but it is just the title, so that's okay. If they were trying to rip off or be inspired by Sandy, then they didn't do a very good job. But no, it was just the title that was inspired from the Springsteen track. Talk to Me is the third track, which is the first Ace Frehley track from this album. The same as Dynasty. I think there are 3 Ace Frehley tracks on the Dynasty album of the 9 on that album. So after his debut vocal performance on Shock Me from Love Gun, Ace Frehley starts to get a bit more airtime on this album, if you like to call it that. Of course, Peter Criss isn't here now, although he is on the front cover, so there's no Peter Criss songs here, of course. So there are the 3 guys that are kind of sharing the limelight. I'm not mad about Talk to Me, I have to say. The lyrics are very repetitive. We'll see that in a later Ace Frehley track. But I like the guitar solo. That's one thing I can say that's good about Talk to Me. Naked City, the fourth track, is the first Gene Simmons cut. And this is the first great track on the album. Is That You? Good. Shandy? It's okay. More Talk to Me? It's decent. But this and the next two tracks that follow this are really, really good, I have to say. I think it helps that Naked City is the heaviest track on the album. Yet, it's got a bit of a dark, murky undertone with that bass line. And it's a good vocal performance from Gene. Really like the chorus, the guitar riff on this one. Again, of course, it's not up to the standard of God of Thunder, let's say, but it is pointless to compare this because it's just a different type of music, ultimately. What Makes the World Go Round from Paul Stanley. Catchy, it's more disco-like in its sound, but I like it. The chorus is really catchy, it's got a real sing-along quality for it. It's not heavy, menacing rock, but it's a good time track, and it's much better than something like Tomorrow and Tonight, which is quite repetitive from Love Gun. And again, I really like the second guitar solo here from Ace Frehley. So that's it for side one. Side two starts with Tomorrow. This is a real highlight on this album. It's got a great groove to it, this one. And similar to the last track, What Makes the World Go Round, it has a great sing-along chorus to it as well. I haven't thought about this too much till now, actually, but the guitar sound really elevates this album. And I'm aware that the guitar's sound and guitars in general are a massive part of the rock sound, but they do really stand out here. And according to Wikipedia, Paul plays all the guitars on this track. He plays all the guitars on a couple of tracks on this album. Two Sides of the Coin from Ace Frehley. It's a mid-track. It's okay on this album. It's not one of my favourites, but I can still have fun with it, and I probably prefer it to Talk to Me. It's a fairly catchy chorus, but it doesn't really pack a punch as much as the previous two Paul Stanley tracks. Again, I'll say it, but the guitar solo is killer here, supported by some real cool backing drums you can hear in the guitar solo as well. That's one thing, as I've said previously, the guitars really elevate this album, and one thing I'll say about Two Sides of the Coin, if nothing else, is that the guitar solo is really good. She's So European, I talked about that one a little bit earlier. Imagine that getting this album on release and seeing a track called She's So European. I had a quick flick through all the KISS albums before this, and I thought, there isn't anything. There are some questionable tracks, titles, but there isn't anything really that comes close to She's So European as a title. And you must think, well, what's so European about? Who knows? It's got a great rhythm to it, though, this track. The lyrics are baffling, but I'm not really that bothered. I've said in my previous videos that there's a battle between lyrics and music, and some people are lyrics people and some people are music people. I'm very much in that music category. Lyrics have to be decent, of course, but the music here is good. It's got a good rhythm to it, and I like it. I think, though, this is one of the tracks that I like on this album, but definitely wouldn't have fit on earlier KISS albums, but it does play nicely into the sound of the album here. It's got far less depth to it, this, than Naked City, which was the previous Gene Simmons cut from this. Was it the previous Gene Simmons cut? Yes, it was. But even though it's got far less depth, I still really enjoy this track. Easy As It Seems is track 9 by Paul Stanley, and right off the bat, the lyrics are far better than the previous track, and certainly easier to understand. The bass line that gets things going is really groovy. Lyrically, it's good. Vocally, it's good. I really like the backing vocals as well here. The kind of caller response. It's easy, easy, easy as it seems. A real highlight on the album for me, this track. I really like Easy As It Seems. Torpedo Girl, I'm going to give this one some flack from Ace Frehley. I think I can say I dislike this one. Never really been fond of it. I mean, what is a torpedo girl? I don't know. Maybe somebody else knows. And I did do a bit of searching on Google. I had a bit of a raised eyebrow at one of the potential meanings, and I'm not going to go into that here. But quite apart from the lyrics, I don't find the sound really that catchy. The chorus isn't really that catchy. The one good part of this song, I think, is the instrumental period after the Come On Get Your Feet Wet sequence. But after that, I just find it repetitive. Even the guitar riff, and it just goes on for too long. I was looking at the lyrics when listening to this, and the last 16 lines have Torpedo Girl, Let's Take a Dive, Torpedo Girl, and Feel Alive. It just goes on for too long. I wouldn't skip it if I was playing the full album, but I'd say, hand on heart, definitely, it's my least favourite from this album. And with that, we've got to the final track on the album, which is You're All That I Want, You're All That I Need, You're All That I See, You're Everything to Me. Gene Simmons gets all sentimental with this track. Can you imagine the God of Thunder getting all sentimental? It's hardly the demon image, really. Gene Simmons is my favourite member of KISS, so he often gets a pass from me. And I do think, genuinely, this is a decent, if not good, song. It's mid-tempo, the lyrics are a bit soppy, but I like the chorus to be somewhat catchy. Again, I'm not going too far here because it's not the best song on this album by any means. I like the bridge, the guitar solo that follows, and apparently that one is from Paul Stanley, according to the credits. So that's it for KISS Unmasked. Those are the 11 tracks. And as I said earlier in the discussion, that to be clear, I'm not suggesting it's anywhere near the best KISS album, but sometimes it's not really worth comparing apples and oranges because you can't compare Unmasked with maybe the first album. You can't compare this to early KISS. But nevertheless, despite all that, I find it a good time. And I do understand that some people have got a resistance against it, particularly those that were around in the day and going, oh my god, I can't believe my band are doing this, KISS. No, but there are some real highlights in here. It's not all great. It is a mixed album, definitely, but the highlights, I think, is that Use a Good track, the first track. Naked City, I said that was really good. Tomorrow, I really liked that. Easy As It Seems is really good. She's So European is good, but I don't think it works outside the confines of this album. But the previous 4, I think, go well with the rest of the KISS canon. The rest are decent, and that's at worst, apart from Torpedo Girl, that I'm not really a fan of. So what do you think about KISS Unmasked? It's an album that I like. Again, I will stress that it's not my favourite KISS album. Of course it's not. But it is a good album and one that I've enjoyed playing this week. So let me know down in the comments what you think of KISS Unmasked. I've done a few other KISS reviews on the channel over the years, so make sure to go and check those out. There might be one in the end screen that pops up there. I've signed us up to Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so I think wherever you get your podcasts, really, this should be available in a podcast form, so you don't have to look at me particularly. You can just listen to the audio as well. There's a Facebook page set up. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all of the socials, so you can catch my content over on there as well. But all that's to say from me is keep rocking. Go and revisit Unmasked if you haven't listened to it for a long time. It's certainly one I enjoy, and hopefully I've tempted you to maybe go and listen to, if not all the album, maybe a couple of the tracks from this album. But there'll be a video up there in the end screen, hopefully a KISS related video for you to go and check out next.